Good morning, eighth graders. I want to quickly go over your assignment for this week. Last week, well, to start off, we looked at the geography of the White River Valley, and you analyzed five different towns around the United States and in Brazil for different layouts, and you sort of analyzed that. You looked a little bit into transportation. Last week, you made a decision about how big you wanted your city to be, and you looked into education and thinking about what the education in your town is going to look like and how many schools you were going to need. And that should have gotten you thinking about how you're going to be spreading out your different communities. Today, we're going to spend some time looking at the actual geography of our towns and starting to notice where good areas for development are and aren't. So you're going to start off by watching. So this video will be in the second slide right here. You'll see the agenda. Video that you're watching right now should be in the second slide. You're required to watch these videos. I can see who has watched them and who hasn't. And it's really important that you watch these videos because they explain the assignment, but also there are directions in here that aren't written down because I want to be able to explain things to you and I don't want them to be confused. So anytime you see me post a YouTube video on here, you are required to watch it as a part of the assignment. And I can see it tells me which students watched it, which ones didn't. You're required to watch it. We're going to start off by watching a video about the floodings in Italy. And then you're going to answer this question for the do now. The White River Valley has suffered from many floods, including the Great Flood of 1927 and the Hurricane Irene. Both times, the towns of Bethel and Royalton were devastated. When thinking about building your city of the future, what might you do to prevent your town from being destroyed by floods? So part of thinking about the city of the future is thinking about how you're going to protect it and keep natural disasters from occurring. And flooding is not the only thing. Though I speak about flooding here, we also deal with a lot of snow and ice. I know around the country you see forest fires, and Vermont isn't safe from forest fires. That's why there's watchtowers everywhere. Um, there could be tornadoes. There could be all sorts of different things that can occur. So think about that when you're thinking about your town. Next, you are going to listen to this little, it's only a 4-minute recording about the flood of 1927. I just want you to hear about the history of it. They specifically talk about Bethel. They talk about Marshfield. They talk about just how insane it was to be able to travel from Burlington to Bethel after this huge flood. And I want you to imagine what it must have been like. So I just want you to understand how our geography and the river affect your community and it affects how you should be planning for it in the future, and how that really hasn't changed. It occurs again and again and again. For some reason, we keep having these floods in Bethel and Royalton, but we keep rebuilding right on the water, which may not be the best decision. So when you're rethinking about how you're going to develop and plan this community, what does that look like? So after listening to that, what are three things that were different in the time of the 1927 flooding from the recording from now? And I want you to think specifically about how people were affected by the flood, how they tried to respond to the flood, and think about transportation, geography, jobs. They're going to talk about all of that in this recording, and it's super duper interesting. One of the things, and I'll tell you this right now, is that the way that they were trying to travel from Burlington to Bethel is dramatically different than how you would travel from Burlington to Bethel today. And how it was affected, you can just imagine how incredibly difficult it was. They talk about how they get information, which is really interesting about what happened in Bethel. Next, you are going to choose which town map you have. This should pop up as a PDF of your town. You're going to review your town map in great detail. And I want you to look at it as closely as you can. Zoom in. I'm going to pull one up here in a second here, but zoom in and look around it. I want you to find 3 areas that may be good for building your town and your different neighborhoods and your community, where how transit might be able to get to and from different areas. Where might you want a downtown versus where do you want all of your neighborhoods to be? Or is there even a downtown in neighborhoods, or is it all just spread out where you have little pockets of downtowns, little pockets of neighborhoods? That's up to you, but I want you to look at your town and think about where might be really good and where might be really bad for developing. So for example, here we have our map of Bethel. You can see that if you zoom in, it really clears up. And you can see all these little green spots. Those are wetlands. And here's the river. And this is where it floods quite a bit. And guess what? Here, my computer is freezing up just a tiny bit. But notice where downtown Bethel is built. So here's, sorry, I keep, there we go. Here's downtown Bethel area. And here's the river. And here's the areas that keep getting flooded. All through here. Here is the school. And notice how these areas too, you see these other little creeks that come down. These roads are constantly washed out. If you know, and you live up on Camp Brook Road, the road still gets washed out. So it's not just on the river, it's anywhere where the water is flowing. Notice these different contours in the map where you see really steep hills. That may not be easy to build on, but then you have these bigger flat areas that may be easier for development. These areas over here too. Notice these. So when you see these lines really close together, they're telling you how steep it is. And if the lines are further apart, it's flatter. The last thing that you need to know when you answer this question about where are really good areas to build and where are bad areas, if you find a really bad area, um, say a really bad area might be at the top of this peak, right here where my mouse is. Now, the way you're going to convey this to me is by telling me where on the map it is. And we're going to say 53, because here's the number 53. You can see this line coming across 53 by 88. So 88-53 is where you might say is a bad area to build. And then in here, so when you write down bad area 88-53, and that'll be easy for me to find. Why is it bad? Incredibly steep. By the way, you cannot use this one. It's an example. You can't use this one. Incredibly steep soil erosion. No flat ground. That's something you might put. So tell me where you might build, where you wouldn't want to build, and why. Okay. And I would love for you to start telling me what you might want to put in there. Like this would be a good spot for a neighborhood, a little downtown area, maybe some schools. Because you're going to start brainstorming that. Because in the future, you're going to actually be drawing out your community and thinking about all the different geographic features and how it might affect. Finally, your exit ticket. Here's your exit ticket. Looking at the geography of your town, what town that you've previously researched. So Arcata, Sacramento, Brasilia, Burlington, Levitt, or Celebration, Florida. Where do you think would be would best be a model for designing your city? Think about the size, layout, geography, etc. Why do you think this town is the best model for designing your city? And answer that question here, and then turn it in. If you have any questions, please email me. Um, come to my office hours both on Tuesday and Friday, and I would be more than happy to help you. Thank you.